I've seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me away. So go, leave me, run like you never did. No, believe me, run like you've never run before.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog. Thank you, everybody who's joining us rather than watching the Edinburgh Player of the Season awards. We're very grateful to joining. We will tell you who's won. Don't worry. If you don't want to know the result, post in the comments, and I'll do a little warning if you're going to watch that back afterwards, because, of course, this would be the place to be, wouldn't it, John?
Definitely, yes. I was tempted, but I guess my loyalty. I know where my loyalty lies.
Well, if you don't want to know the results, then we'll tell you when to look away. Otherwise, I'm just going to go straight into it. I'll read the results out later. I am Cammy Black, as always, your host. Joining me this evening, we have got John Anderson. Hello, John.
Hiya, folks. Hi, Cammy. How you doing, mate?
We're supposed to have Ian here with us as well now. Last we heard from Ian, he said, I'm off to get some coffee, and he was moaning about the fact that his missus had not got any biscuits in the house. So I don't know if he's taken off in hunter biscuits. We don't know. Stranger
things have happened this year, so yes. he might be off on a biscuit front.
Facebook does not let us go late, though, so we've had to just go live without him. I'm hoping at some point he'll pop in, and then we'll just add him to the stream, and it'll all be good.
May want to give him a message beforehand just to say that we are live, and please do not swear.
I've worked out tonight I have control over who I can mute.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and get a god complex and start muting people when I disagree with. Not that we ever disagree that much, but so this, we've got a jam-packed podcast tonight. It is not, as someone suggested on Twitter this week, just going to be a filler episode, John.
I mean, I offered a bit more filler for it. Yeah, that was a bold comment. I like that.
It was good. I know, I like that, and a bit of chippiness in the comments. Then, that's what we like to see. So we've got a fair bit of news to get through. We've got the Pro. What is it as it stands? The Pro 12. Although we'll come on
12
to
at the moment, yeah.
Where we end up with that, who knows, later on. We've got a bit of Europe to discuss. We might touch upon the Scotland squad because there's a few outside bets for that. We'll cover the Edinburgh Awards as well, given that you've all decided to join us rather than go and watch that live.
Only fair, I think. Only fair.
Yeah. So we're live at the moment on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. So you can find us there, watch us live. I'm going to add Ian. Look, he's fiddling about. Here he is. Hello, Ian. Good evening. Did you find any biscuits?
Did you bring the good biscuits? More to the point.
There is no biscuits. I am biscuitless. Biscuitless boil from Bonus.
No, so you can mute people, Cam, but can you just kick them straight out of the call for not bringing biscuits?
I can. Yeah, check. I can remove them from the stream as well. So.
Isn't there always a problem with cookies?
There you go. Except cookies.
Hang on. I'm all out of whack here. I need to move my desk these days.
Well, I'm going to mute Ian while he moves his desk, and I'll tell you what I'll do while he does that. You can all watch him do it while we talk about. Anyway, this isn't. If you listen on the audio podcast, this is meaningless. We're just waffling at the minute. Yeah, we're live at the minute on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. You can also download this and listen on any podcast app, and listen to the audio version after as well. Get involved in the comments if you're watching along on any of those, and we will put them up on the screen. We've got Andy. Here's Andy Lone just to show us. Andy Lone, regular listener and watcher of the podcast, has said good evening. Hello, Andy. We've also got our Patreon, which you can subscribe to the podcast. You for about £3 a month, you get into the Richie Vernon Thunderdome, and that gets you access to exclusive monthly content as well as ad-free audio versions of the podcast. For £5, though, you can upgrade to the Dougie Donnelly Members Lounge. Come in from the cold, we'll get you a pint. See how you're doing. It's my mother-in-law's trying to FaceTime me live on air. This is no good at all. So yes, you can do all of that on our Patreon. Like I say, £3 a month or £5 a month, you get lots of additional episodes as well. We've got one on Rugby Sevens. John and I have done one on why conspiracy theories are so attractive to a certain group of Scottish professionals.
Yes.
Ian, John and I about a month ago also did a chat about the prospects of a third pro team in Scotland as well. So lots to listen to. Next month in October, we're doing kind of a month-long series of articles on the blogs and a couple of podcasts looking for Scotland's hardest ever player. And we're being quite generous with how we interpret the word hard. It could be overcoming adversity off the pitch or on the pitch. So there'll be lots to get involved in. Some of that will be on the blog, some will be on the podcast, on the Patreon pages and exclusives. So we'll launch straight into it. I don't know where to start, but there's a lot to talk about. Should we go Europe first? Big bit of news today.
Europe first, yep.
Big bit of news today is that there is 2 Scottish names on the shortlist for European Player of the Year this year, and they are Stuart Hogg and Finn Russell. They've made it from the long list onto the shortlist. Also on the list is we've got Semiran Radra is on the list, although he's playing in the Challenge rather than the Champions Cup, and I don't think anybody has ever won it whilst being on the Champions Cup. In the Champions Cup before. I don't think. I did check beforehand. If I'm wrong, then someone will correct me, I'm sure. We've also got Sam Simmons of Exeter Chiefs and Virimi Vakatawa of Racing 92 as well. John, exciting. 2 Scottish players.
Yeah, I mean, both playing very, very well, obviously. It's great to see the recognition of two of, I would probably argue, 2 of our best individuals who are obviously tearing it up elsewhere. Just again kind of adds some fuel to the idea that, you know, if you're kind of doing it out with a Scotland, it's maybe valued a wee bit more. You know, the Pro 14, 12, 16, 26, whatever, doesn't necessarily, despite the fact it's got like the best team in the world in it, still doesn't seem to have the reputation that it maybe deserves. So apparently not being able to do it on a wet Friday night in Scotland's not quite the same as tearing it up at the Paris Metrodome with the fancy beer plugs. So, but no, really exciting. I'm really, really pleased. I mean, maybe a bit more surprised Hogg's on the list than Russell. Russell's just been outrageous and deserves to be there. Hogg, maybe, you know, he's been very consistent since he's went to Exeter. So, yeah, good to see.
Yeah, Ian, I mean, it's strange. There's been a lot of Finn Russell doubters crawling out the woodwork of late. 7, I think, the Opta Johnny, who is not Johnny Gray, but is just a man called Johnny who works for Opta, on Twitter had tweeted out that it was 7 assists during the Champions Cup this season, which I think is the highest anyone's got, and a 20% kick pass success rate, which
kick retention, I think it's 30%.
Yeah,
which is nobody else. It doesn't sound very high, but it's much higher than anybody else.
He's the pivot of a very exciting racing team, but you know, well, it's rugby, so there's always, and also social media, so there's always going to be somebody throwing throwing shade, I believe the young ones say these days. So that's my vote has already been cast. I'm pretty sure you can guess where it went.
Randrara.
Outside bet, yes. And if I was not in any way biased, possibly, but
He's playing in a Mickey Mouse Cup. We can't vote for him.
true.
MD that got to the quarterfinals of that Mickey Mouse Cup, it's not really worth. It's not worth
Careful,
talking about.
steady on, John. I'm going to make you do the Edinburgh preview on your own later on.
I would love to do the Edinburgh preview, man.
But you're only allowed to say nice things.
I can be very, very pleasant when I need to be.
Yeah. It is strange. I mean, there's a lot. I think, and I don't want to jump early on the Lions chat, but it's a strange season. We're out of sync. I'm not going to play the jingle because it was too early in the podcast to get a jingle out of the way. Shall we do it?
Yeah,
I can do it because I've got the mind up. But let's get
all filler.
It's the legally mandated Lions chat. The legally mandated Lions chat. We've heard so much about it that it makes us sick, but we've still got a chat about who Gatlin's gonna pick.
So yes, let's go for it. There's the Lions chat jingle with pictures now. Beautiful. For anyone watching. It makes it interesting. I suppose we're only talking about it now, not because there's no rugby to talk about, but because it's been a strange season, and we've got this kind of hangover of last season crossing over with the new season. After the autumn tests, I think is officially when you're allowed to talk about it. But the Russell at 10 thing throws up an interesting thing because he's not played for Scotland yet, although it sounds like he's likely to be in the squad because everything's patched up. The other candidates are Johnny Sexton, who, with his forearms and neck muscles bulging, you know what he was doing up to over lockdown. We've got Owen Farrell, Dan Bigger. I mean, no one's taking George Ford, are they, on a Lions tour?
I think if that's your other options, no. But it's Lauren Gatland.
Just love George Ford at 10 with those big South Africans coming down that channel, wouldn't you? Oh,
Sexton's going to get absolutely murdered.
It's going to get run over the top. It's going to be class.
I think what age is Sexton? Is he 35, 34, 35?
704.
What was that stat that came out last week? Was he only played something like 20 odd minutes of Pro 14 last season?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So
he's basically centrally managed by the Irish national team now, and just kind of loaned out to Leinster when he needs to turn for finals.
Put in cryogenic storage in between internationals.
It's like Demolition Man.
Well, I did see Judge Dredd got a wee outing on the.
He did, yeah, he did.
Very pleased.
I mean, if we're talking, I think if we go in the Demolition Man, he's definitely the Wesley Snipes character.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Does that make Russell Sylvester Stallone then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Undoubtedly. It's a neat segue. That's a great film, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's back on Netflix for.
Is it back? Oh, it was on Prime for ages. It was on Prime. No, it was on Prime for a while.
On ITV2 recently.
Yeah, we watched it early on in lockdown. It's just a great, wonderful film.
So
to my mind, Sandra Bullock's greatest film.
Better than Speed?
No, I like it better than Speed.
Yeah. I think it's got a bit more about it.
It's definitely Rob Schneider's best film. That's not a high bar. Anyway, back to the Lions. Rob Schneider for 10. And Adam Sandler on the wing. I think the reason why a lot of people have said this week that Russell shouldn't really be nailed on 10 for the Lions, and I can kind of understand it in a way that I'm not necessarily sure that he fits in neatly with the selections Gatland's made in the past. But if the reservations have been that Scottish players haven't got big game experience, then here we've got Finn Russell playing in the final of the European Champions Cup, and he's been instrumental in the way they've played. I suppose the only concern I would have, Ian, and I'll throw this to you, is that Finn Russell has said himself in the past, he thrives when he's happy and in a good environment. Now, the Lions can be a very difficult environment. He didn't have a great time last time round with the Geography 6 debacle, and he said, I think, that he was pretty much isolated. So whether or not, I mean, that's a big ask to go into that environment with players who effectively gave you the cold shoulder the last time you had two of them and be running the game from there. So, Cass, what's the question? Is, can Finn Russell be happy on a Lions tour?
I think so. He's a pretty happy-go-lucky chap. I think that him and the rest of the Geography 6, it was their status within the squad. The fact that he even got called the Geography 6, for example. I think that probably counted against them because they knew they were like dirt trackers. They're not even dirt trackers. They were dirt trackers for the dirt trackers. They were dirt tracker binges. So I think that definitely affected things. And, people... But the rest of the pros, they watch the games themselves. They've seen what he's doing. He's tearing up in Europe. So obviously, they'd have to respect him. If he's there on merit rather than geography, then I think they wouldn't have to get along with him. But I think they would find it pretty easy, and I think he'd be all
I suppose the only downside, John, would be if Warren Gatland goes with something like established combinations, because that you maybe got, I think Ali Price and George Horn are probably outside bets for the Lions too, unless they have a really good run at it. And, outside maybe, Sam Johnson, I think there's probably better 12s out. We're unlikely to see a Scottish 12, I think, on the Lions too, right? Certainly in the main squad. So that might go against them, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but I think you have to look... You have to look past that combinations. That's fine to a point when you've got those options. You've got the option to maybe throw a Conor Murray and a Johnny Sexton from 5, 7, 25 years ago onto a pitch together. And if you've got that option, that's great. But I think you can't look past an individual talent like Russell and the way that Russell's managed to fit into both the racing setup, which he's obviously thrived in and has taken a real leadership role in, but also like things like the Barbarians, where he obviously tore it up with them as well, and he showed he's a big personality and he's capable of handling. I remember an interview with him right at the start of his Glasgow career, actually, and he was being asked, how does it feel being, you're the new kid on the block, but you're running the game, you're a 10 and you have to boss these very experienced people around. And he was very matter of fact about it. It's like, it's my job. I don't really care. They have to listen to me. It's my job. So, in typical Finn Russell fashion, just it says what's on his mind. But no, it's I really don't think Gatlin will be able to hide behind that. I think on form, Russell's the best 10. I appreciate what people are saying regarding internationals and not being back in the fold yet, but perhaps let's see. I think we're doing hands in the ruck later on, so let's perhaps see if that gets a wee outing later on.
We've got Joe Shepherd says, so Warren Gatland will always think about himself. It's about his legacy, not the team. Sexton isn't currently first choice. Finn probably is. Conor Murray won't or shouldn't be going. I think there's an element to that with this too, and that it could go both ways, because there is this Gatland legacy and he's. I don't get the impression that from you and I, John, did the 97 Lions tour recap over lockdown where we watched that documentary, and there was no sense that Geach or Jim Telfer were looking to their own legacy.
No.
But you get that sense that Gatland has the potential to have that about him, to be thinking that, I'm going to coach the Lions to 3 successful-ish tours, given they drew the one in New Zealand that they would have won if they'd played got Greg Ladle off the bench.
Absolutely.
As I suggested. But I think that it's an interesting point Joe makes, that Gatland has this tendency to be his own man and make his own decisions, sometimes not necessarily taking a wider view on things or what is best for the team or the Lions. A lot of it's what's good for Warren Gatland and Warren Gatland's team.
I think that in itself is okay for the Lions if we put aside the. So I appreciate the point regarding the Lions overall, right? The legacy of Warren Gatland thus far has been to alienate probably a significant portion of Scottish fans from Lions by choosing not to pick players. And, you know, he's obviously had his reasons for that. And we've argued that till, you know, the cows are home and are tucked up in bed with their Ovaltine with that one. But in terms of that sort of thought process, that short-termism, it should work for the Lions. You know, being able to make the big calls, dropping O'Driscoll for the last Australia game. Maybe, I can't believe I'm going to say this, maybe a lesser coach wouldn't make those calls. But Gatland is a very well-renowned coach and makes these decisions. And I just hope he can see past the fact that Dan Biggar's a frankly awful 10 and shouldn't be in the squad.
I suppose Ian, this time, he's got no skin in the game this time, other than for past loyalties. He's not Wales coach. He's not, you know, trying to do favour. I don't think he'd ever say he was doing kind of mates a favour or anything, but there was an element of unconscious or conscious bias towards players that he knew.
Yeah, and also the fact is that after after the Lions, he's going to have to continue his relationship with those players. So maybe there was an element of that to it. I'm still kind of frightened by John's wee analogy there, because if a cow's having an Ovaltine, that means it's using milk. So is it using its own milk?
I will leave that for you to decipher.
Different animals give milk, Ian.
Yeah, but what type do cows use though? What's the cow use?
Well, they drink cow's milk. What do baby cows drink?
Water.
Why do you think cows? Why do you think, like, let's just park the rugby for a second. Let's get down to the birds and the bees.
Yeah,
why do lady cows produce milk?
For us to enjoy in our coffee and tea.
Yeah,
but
but
also,
yeah.
also for the younglings.
Originally, though.
But good point. I think it was kind of cannibalistic into some kind of fashion, but it's not, is it? No,
It's not. No.
no.
No, it's
Anyway,
literally drinking it for the reason it was intended.
Yeah, it's intended rather than. Well, that's because you're a vegetarian. You know these things, Cammy.
I do. Well, I tell you, we were watching Country Film, my wife once, and we were watching about veal calves, like a little side divergence here. So it was about veal calves, and the whole argument was veal's not a bad thing because it deals with waste from the dairy industry. And my wife was like, "What's the waste from the dairy industry?" I was like, "Well, all the boy cows. You don't need the boy calves because you need one." And he goes off and does his job, and that's that. And the rest, well, they're useless. She was like, well, can't they produce milk? And I was like, no. Sure, why not? I was like, it's only the lady cows that produce milk. But here's the thing. So I and she was like, well, of course, yeah. And when we talked about it, and then I've told that story to people since, and they've been like, whoa, you mean like men cows don't have udders? I'm like, no. I know I'm from Berwick, and I went to school with like a load of farmers lads and stuff, but I'm like, this isn't like something that only people that grew up in the countryside should know.
Fed from the bottle.
But apart from Ian, who thinks that cows don't drink cow's milk.
I was bottle fed. That's my excuse.
Where were we?
Finn Russell.
Gatland, has he previously picked Welsh players because they're Welsh?
Yeah.
Financial gain as well.
Yeah, but also, the thing as well, they were winning stuff. They're the Six Nations champions, so until somebody knocks them off their perch. They've not been brilliant under Wayne Pivac, but it's obviously a big cultural change and style change. So we'll see how these autumn tests, and then are we getting a proper Six Nations next year as well? Is that still the plan?
That's the plan, I think. That's the plan. So I think it's very much watch this space. Ryan Cabane's been on. He says, coming on for rugby and getting a biology lesson, just what's needed on a Tuesday night for a long day. Glad we could help with that, Ryan. I suppose while we're kind of speaking about Finn Russell, and we started talking about Europe, we've got 5 players. 5 players in the. Is it? I've got that right. Four. 4 players in the finals. You've got Finn Russell, Sam Hildago-Klein, Johnny Gray, Sam Skinner, Stuart Hogg 5.
Yeah, there's 4 from Exeter and Finn.
Yeah, 4v1, and we're all team Finn, yeah?
I think so,
yes. Yeah, exactly. There's not, aside from the fact that there are 4 Scotland nationals playing for them, they're a hard team to like for reasons that we've discussed in previous podcasts.
Yes.
You know, am I supporting the French team or am I supporting the team with racist Brandon, who refused to engage with that at all?
And they introduced the caterpillar ruck as well. So
Was that them who introduced that?
that's the
Let's just say it was.
first ones. They kicked up a big stink about it. It was them doing it that kicked up a big stink on Twitter last year. So
Yeah.
I'm sure it was them who probably invented the choke tackle as well. Then I know it's credited to
killing
Ireland.
Exeter,
Killing the game.
rugby.
they invented booing. Doing the kicker. That was excellent.
That was this guy.
The fact they've been playing the tomahawk chop over the audio system, I think,
Anyway.
But anyway, we've got this. The reason I mention that is because we have got the autumn tests coming up, and we can actually start to talk about them now because it seemed like a growing certainty. We're certainly a few weeks away now from the Georgia warm up. So there's a couple of bolters, and Samuel Dargo Klein is one now. This was Ian Wallace's, the artist formerly known as the Beard of Scottish Rugby, Ian Wallace. Tafka Boss, I think I worked out that was today for abbreviating it. This was his hands in the ruck, but I think it's worth discussing now. His point was there are a lot of players in Exeter who do very well as a team. There's a number of individuals that have played well for Exeter that don't get picked for England, for example. And as Ian pointed out, Samuel Dargo Klein is a good rugby player, but he struggled to get a club. He struggled at Edinburgh, and yes, he's doing well at Exeter behind a dominant pack, but he's 28, I think, now. So if he was, I don't think Ian's point was a few games for Exeter doesn't jump him ahead of George Horn or Ali Price in the pecking order for Scotland. I mean, do you think we'll see him called up, Ian, to the wider camp? I mean, you'd think that's a likelihood.
Yeah, they are talking about making it a bigger than usual camp. I think that was a Stuart Hawke interview. I read that.
Yeah, the good, the bad, the good, the bad, and the rugby.
So, and also I believe Henry Purgos is injured, so he's certainly missing the Ospreys game. I read that earlier on. If you're taking 4 scrum halves, probably he's going to be in it. Yeah, because you've got Price, Horn, Purgos if he's fit. If not, Dolby, and then that's your only other option really. So
yeah,
I thought Klein would have to be in the reckoning. And if he's playing for a confident team, if he's playing confidently. And for a winning team, if he's included in a winning team, he must be doing something right. So you'll have to earn it, but it's always one of these things that they say about him is that he plays well when he's looking for a contract.
Yeah. The other kind of bolter, I suppose, John, which a few people have mentioned, and I meant to touch on it last week, but we ended up doing, I think, like an epic 1.5 hour podcast, is Callum Hunter-Hill.
Yes, CHH, not quite Triple H, but he's getting there. He's playing really well. Looking the part for the cheats. So him and Swino are tearing it up. It's again wider squad. I think you got to get these guys into camp and see what they're all about. Not entirely sure there wasn't. So Cam Hunter-Hill went south. There was perhaps some stuff going on that the SRU were not thrilled about, but we move on. And
please, his Twitter. He's woke. He's the woke.
He's very
hero.
woke. He'd
Probably
probably come on here, wouldn't he? He would probably
come here and talk about what a walloper Donald Trump is, and
he
wouldn't play. I mean, he's happy enough to pay for Saracens, but that's financial cheating. That's not being racist. Like
there's got to be a moral line, hasn't there?
So, any other bolters or kind of outside bets, Ian, for you for the autumn squad as we stand? I mean, I know it's early days. I mean, you're going to have the South Africans in. We've already talked about that. But anybody else that you think we should be looking out for?
James Lang's been getting a bit more game time than Harlequins, but he's not been playing particularly well, I don't think, whenever I've seen him. I saw he threw an intercept pass, which ended up costing him the game. I think that was against Bath. And did you see the Quins game last night? Actually, they absolutely threw it away.
The Mike Brown could not have happened to a nicer man.
Yeah, they got Elia got himself sent off early doors. Well, no, sorry, not early doors, but about halfway through the second half. At which point they had a big lead and then just capitulated it. So perhaps not, but he's a sort of 10-12 hybrid mould. We've already got Pete Horn for that kind of thing, or Russell Hastings.
Yeah,
as we enjoy so much.
Hastings.
Other than that, I don't. I mean, because we've seen so little action from the Pro 14 teams, we can't pick anyone. Might get Stafford McDowell in there, but I mean, how many games before they do this? The squad is only.
Well, you've got we'll do the preview in a minute. The kind of Pro 12 as it's going to be in a moment, but I think it's probably only really at least one, if not two games, because before the Georgia match, which I think is the 24th of October, Georgia warm-up game.
I was at the 23rd, maybe Friday.
23rd, something like So you've got, I mean, just if you don't, I'm going to go through the results of as a neat segue, and because it's kind of covers a couple of outside bets or at least one outside bet for the autumn squad, is the Embra Player of the Season awards, which were happening as we came on air and have now finished. So in true 6 o'clock news style on a Saturday night, if you're going to watch Match of the Day later, if you are going to watch the Embra Player of the Season awards broadcast later, but you join us for this, then please look away now, because we're going to, well, no, actually, turn off the volume, mute it, because I'm going to speak. I'm going to tell you, because this is no good in an audio format, even though we're broadcasting as well. So, Man of Steel this year was Luke Crosby. Now, Luke Crosby also won another award. He won Young Player of the Season. Now, there was long rumoured that he was on his way over to Glasgow, Luke Crosby, and obviously he hasn't made the move. The rumour I heard was that he'd bought a nice house in Embra and wasn't that keen on moving. It's the rumour I'd heard. But that's true. I don't know. But I mean, he's going to be. I know Sandy speaks very highly of him the way he's played, so he's going to be an outside bet. The other one award winner tonight was Most Improved Player of the Season was George Taylor.
Okay.
Another prospect at centre potentially. Iain, you're looking doubtful.
I was thinking, he's got potential, but again, his primary position's number 12, so we're already kind of covered there.
Yeah.
He's been like 12, isn't he? 13, isn't he?
Yeah, he's been like 12.
It's usually Johnson outside him. Yeah.
I was quite concerned as well, thinking about him during the Bordeaux game. The centres in particular were, we're not going to write him off because of one poor game against Bordeaux, but certainly I didn't see anything during that game that filled me with excitement.
Yeah.
Mind you, who we won't probably be seeing again at 12. Guess who? Duncan Taylor got himself injured.
Classic Dunk. Have we heard much more Have we heard much more about that injury? Then is that?
No, but it's him, so he's probably shattered it into 1,000 pieces.
Yeah, it's like the Terminator when it in T2 when it gets.
What's the name? What's the guy? What was that M. Night Shyamalan film with Samuel L. Jackson plays Glass? Can he walk or break his bones?
Duncan Taylor's Glass. So who's Bruce Willis then? Who's never injured?
That's a good question. Mish, yeah.
He does get injured, but not.
Yeah.
Well, that was like when he broke he broke his arm or his hands just before the Six Nations.
Hand, yeah.
And we thought he might be out for the entire thing, and he only missed 2.5 games. 2.5
games, and he came in and beat more men than both sides combined in the second half.
One of the few highlights.
No, that was it. He went to. Did he go to number 3 in players beaten after one game?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think we'll put him as the Bruce Willis character.
Yeah.
Cool.
Who's the? I mean, I don't want to guess who the character with like the 7 different personalities is. let's not go there. The other Ember Awards then. This year's Iron Man. Now I don't know how that differs to Man of Steel. I don't know whether is Iron better than Steel. One's a ferrous metal.
Is Man of Steel like the most tackles or best tackle completion, and then Iron Man just the hardest? Or something? I don't know.
Or something
There we
to-
go. It's Pierre Schumann's won. Pierre Schumann's won that. Best newcomer is Nick Haining. Point of order. Apparently, they mentioned his Wikipedia entry. Just to repeat, that was us. It was not Nick Heining's mate. We put on that he used to do ballet, and then that was reported in the national news. So that was us. And I think, and anytime anyone mentions it, we need to be cited as the source of that. Edinburgh Rugby, if you're watching this, it's patter theft, is what it is. Luke Crosby won Young Player of the Season as well, and Duhan van der Merwe won Player of the Season. Of course, he did. Grant Gilchrist won Principal and Prosper Player of the Season. I think he's played like 3 games all season.
This is one of these weird ones. Like when Ali Price won Player of the Season, was it last season? And he'd been muck up until Christmas.
Aye.
And then he
Is
had
it just-
a decent wee spell.
Is it one of these ones where it's like a fans vote, and then everyone all the kids vote for who they've got a poster of on the wall? Why would you have a Grant Gilchrist poster on your wall? Why am I talking
It'd be
about?
terrifying. Can you imagine waking up to that?
Life-size guy trousers cut out. Ah,
You know, like a giant square head just looking down at you, like ah.
My youngest keeps
Some cabin
waking up having nightmares about gorillas staring at him. I'm wondering what, but he hasn't got a Grant Gilchrist poster in his room.
Wean him off it with a Grant
Gilchrist
Gilchrist
breaks
poster.
into your house at night.
You think a gorilla's scary? Look at this, son.
Look at this. Oh, take the gorillas, Daddy. There you go. Parenting tips. That's what we give in this podcast.
Next, I mean, we'll the Pro 12 as it stands, and we'll come on to that in a minute. Kicks off this weekend, even though the season's literally just finished because of the mad times that we're living in. So on Friday, I'm going to say Friday, then it's going to turn out it's Saturday. On Saturday, in fact, it is Saturday. We've got Edinburgh v Ospreys at Murrayfield, and then you have got Glasgow away at Connacht. With the now is the I think we didn't really get onto this. Is the Connacht sofa sin bin of shame COVID secure?
Well, to be honest, it's so far away from anyone else that you're doing way more than 2 meters distancing. You know,
You're going to have 2 though, aren't you? Because you're going to have one for each team, unless someone's going to get the antibac spray on it in between.
Well, that's it. Or maybe they're forming maybe they're deciding beforehand who the potential troublemakers are and thinking, do you know what? Let's create a social bubble for those guys, right? And then, then it's fair game.
Ryan Wilson's got his own suite.
Footstool. You got a sofa, footstool, a telly.
We've been expecting you, Mr. Wilson. Your favourite periodicals.
Ryan
Like,
Wilson's periodicals. There's the title of this week's podcast.
Nailed it.
Do you have to socially distance further in Connaught, like in Galway, because the wind will make the COVID travel?
Have to stand downwind of people at all times, and the wind's swirling, so it's just people constantly running around the pitch,
It's like a circle bit.
like the Benny Hill music going on.
Machine Head
The
concert.
COVID's coming to get me.
I think in all seriousness, we might be onto something here, guys.
Yeah.
Safety
Should have
first.
moved. They should have moved it indoors. Probably been safer. Maybe the wind just blows the COVID away. Maybe has anybody thought of that? Just getting some massive fans across the country. Set them off. Carry a fan wherever you go and just blow the COVID away from your nose.
I might start doing that. Just
No, I reckon we could probably sell a batch of those to a certain section of former Scottish professionals. Here, lads. I'll do you 2 for 1 on some electric battery-powered fans.
COVID secure hand fans.
Blow the COVID away.
So gets rid of that 5G as well.
They can't hear your thoughts. They the government can't read your thoughts while you're buzzing with a fan. blows away the chemtrails.
Oh dear.
Anyway, it's a strange season because at one point, I think up until about a week ago, there was still the prospect that some South African teams might pitch up halfway through and join in, but that's not happening.
Well, I mean, there
Apparently.
is still the prospect that South Africans might pitch up halfway through. It's just we're not sure which South African teams it might
Teams
be.
it's gonna- Or if it's this season or next, it just says 2021. So who knows? We'll come on to that in a moment. I mean, the issue is, I think this season's very much up in the air because, I mean, you know, it isn't normal. But the interesting thing, I think, is Irish rugby. Well, the news came out of Irish rugby last week that they are going to struggle financially, and everybody is. But I think for the first time, Ireland are going to struggle, and that's whether or not from the hangover of what they've done in the past and the way they've been able to run things, they get through this season.
Yep.
But beyond that, Irish rugby is going to look very different. They're not going to be able to put the same money into Leinster as they've done every year to help them win it, Ian.
No, actually, that's something I was sort of in depth checking out before we came on here. Yeah, they're talking about being 35 million euros in the hole. This is like one of the few times that only having 2 pro clubs is actually a good thing. Yeah, I mean, because it's all centrally contracted, we don't know how much Leinster get per year, but it's estimated to be sort of top end Premier level, sort of 7 million quid. So, you know, if obviously Connacht don't get anywhere near that. But if you're thinking sort of 7 million, 5 million, 5 million for Munster and Ulster, you know, that's up. Basically, you know, their finances are obliterated. I think they said January, if they can't even get people in by January, they're going to start to need borrowing money. But then they reckon it's something like 5 million euro a month. They're losing out on in gate receipts. So yeah, obviously there's big issues there. Unless even the CVC money that's come in, we don't know. You know, they're going to have to
or not.
Or not, yeah.
Or not, yeah. There's no news as to. I think that's still an ongoing discussion. I mean, I think like you said, we're lucky we've got 2 proteins, John, because we maybe don't. I'm not going to let you do the classic Embra dig here. Let's gloss over this, but we don't rely financially on gate receipts as much as other, you know, as maybe other teams in the Pro 12/14 do. You're not allowed to make the Embra joke. People can insert their own joke there.
Insert their own joke. Oh, this is painful. Oh, okay. No, we don't. we because we've had low crowds at both pro clubs for many years prior to Glasgow's resurgence. We didn't really have capacity to rely on fans. You know, both teams were playing in front of 2 men and a dog, various rented stadiums, so we didn't have the capacity to actually rely on fans, and that's continued. And it probably has served us quite well in that, you know, it's a bit of a bonus now that both teams get decent attendances, and that Scotland, obviously from a national perspective as well, we were one of the tier 1 nations that were very much not selling out our stadium, and you know, we were getting crowds of 15,000 along to, you know, game Autumn internationals and things like that. So we weren't in a great place with that, and then we got a wee bit successful and stuff started to turn around, and now we get sellouts, and you know, financially we've probably done a lot better than quite a few people, even with as per last week, paying our chief executives bonuses and stuff like that. We've done okay. We've done fine. So it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll start. I'll let you. We can talk about Glasgow a wee bit then, because Kevin Miller, I saw on Twitter, had done his depth chart, and actually, you're not looking too bad up front in the forwards. There's a couple maybe kind of fullback, a little bit light, which was expected because not really had a replacement for Stuart Hogg as of yet. Leone Nakarawa's back in the country, which is a bonus, but he's 2 weeks he's got to isolate for 2 weeks and then go into pre-season. So the chat is he's not going to be available till December because he's going to go into camp with Fiji. But you know, potentially Glasgow are going to lose a lot of players to Scotland because it's going to be an enlarged camp. But at the same time, there's a fair few young ones that are going to have to step up, I suppose, Ian. I mean, this is going to be the test of the likes of Stafford McDowell. They're going to have to, and Robbie Nairn, they're going to have to step up this season because there isn't really the opportunity to kind of ease in and drift in and out of games.
Yeah, you're not just going to get sort of the odd run out against an already defeated and desolate Zebra. But, you know, every other team's going to be in this kind of scenario. They've not been able to sign people either. And, you know, like you, I looked at the squad depth and you're like, seeing as there's no injuries, this is actually not too bad, apart from the obvious not a real fullback amongst them issue. But, you know, Glenn Bryce is in there. He's solid enough. Some of the younger players that are in, Ollie Smith, for example, and one of the other forwards, but I can't remember who it was. So I thought, Rory Jackson, that was the other one. You know, they've got potential. So maybe getting them exposed to a higher level than they're used to would be good. But like I said, you know, every other team's going to be in the same boat. They're all going to lose a handful of internationals for an extended period of time, and hopefully, you know, Glasgow are maybe just a couple of injuries away from it being a crisis. But you know, there's decent depth there and decent potential. So I'm not as pessimistic as I thought it would be.
Are you feeling optimistic, John?
To be honest, I'm really struggling with how to feel at all because it does just feel like the season ended 30 seconds ago, and I'm still kind of trying to, like, every time someone said, "Oh, the season kicks off again this week," it's like, really? Okay, fine. What? So I was feeling quite pessimistic after the first Edinburgh game, but I resolved to kind of relax and just embrace that things may feel different under Danny Wilson, and that is okay. We may kick the ball a bit more and we may play a more forward-orientated game, but Adam Hastings is still going to do mad stuff, and Hugh Jones might, you know, with a cuddle and a wee tap in the head now and then and a well done son, might turn out to be, you know, the one of the best 13s in the world, like he was showing promise before Rennie got his hands on him. So, you know, we've talked about recruitment a lot with Glasgow, and we've sort of indicated, you know, Edinburgh, maybe there was some idea Edinburgh were getting the kind of the preferential treatment for a couple of seasons, but we've replaced RJ with a British and Irish Lion. We've signed a World Player of the Year, who, yeah, admittedly, because various circumstances will not see him till December, but he'll turn up in December, he'll do what he done last season and, you know, score it within a minute and then throw some mad offloads. So we've done okay recruitment-wise, and it's time for the young guys to really step up and kind of see what they've got. And there's lots of opportunities for them to kind of shine. And we always kind of remember, or a lot of us tend to remember, that we're always one away from a crisis, in that, you know, a big name gets injured and somebody has to come in, and then they might be the next Stuart Hogg, they might be the next Finn Russell. Finn Russell came into the team because he was, you know, we were quite light at 10. It's these players need to be given these opportunities, and I think it's going to be really good for them.
Yeah, I suppose you forget Glasgow won the Pro 12 with Finn Russell at 10, and it was his second season.
Yeah, he played very sporadically before that, and then it was his second season as a pro. Yeah,
his first season is first choice.
That's right. Yeah,
and it turned out all right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just looking at the chart. The only one position I'd be worried about is number 8. Although we don't think Ryan Wilson's going to be getting called up to Scotland camp, and
I think that's official. I don't think he's retired, but I think there was definitely an announcement of sorts that he wasn't.
So if Matt Fagerson goes, then there's only him. Big Jali Valakoloma, he's back fit, isn't he?
The myth, the legend.
Yes,
doesn't exist. No, does not exist. He's I believe he's
for
the same
purposes.
He's the same species as the lesser spotted Jared Firth, formerly of these parts, allegedly.
Maybe these players are just signed as tax write-offs.
No, they must be. They must be. It's smart play. Smart play. It's to get our cut from the SRU up slightly. We make it. It's like when you used to play for like junior football and rugby and stuff like that, and it was like you'd always have you'd be registered, and then there would be that one guy that turns up and is not registered or is dual registered, and it'd be like, you're such and such a day, mate. Just remember that when the ref asks you. It's the same thing.
The one I suppose just very quickly before we move on to Embra, there was a couple of people jumping to Dave Rennie's defence. I mean, Stuart Hogg was fairly damning, I think, about Dave Rennie in his interview with The Good, The Bad and The Rugby, but Adam Hastings was kind of saying, well, look, those times I wanted to knock his head off.
Rip his head off. I know, he dropped me for a month and I wanted to rip his head off.
Yeah. Which is, and that, but he said otherwise, other than that, the relationship was good. I think if someone wants to make you rip the head off,
other than the occasional homicidal thought, he's a decent fella.
But unexpected, and I suppose he kind of had to say that because he's not had to rip his head off, but he had to say, well, he was all right because again, he's an SRU employee, Adam Hastings, so he has to, he doesn't want to make the club look too bad. But Rory Jackson, who's no longer is long retired, has said that he had a good relationship with Dave Rennie and very honest conversations. And much his view on Twitter was very much a lot of the moaning is just disgruntled players. And if you're in a squad of 50, you kind of have to expect that you're going to have prolonged play times out playing. So it was an interesting other different perspective. I think I would say that the Stuart Hogg response I found more telling because that spoke more to a difficulty with a problem with culture and lack of instructions, which is a different kind of problem to, I suppose, Iain, is a different kind of problem to just a few disgruntled dirt trackers.
Yeah, I think one of the sort of man management issues, particularly for someone like Alex Dunbar, was, as he was a former sort of first choice, and because of what Dave Rennie would say to him, oh yeah, if you keep playing well, you'll stay in, but then you get dropped for Nick Grigg like the next week. So I think, for Rory Jackson kind of knew his place in the team. He knew he was back up Stuart Hogg. Maybe some of the other guys, they thought their position in the team should be somewhat different to what it was, and that wasn't communicated properly. But it could just be sour grapes. Although when it's there's no smoke without fire, and it's quite a number of people who have said the same kind of things. But I mean, that is the problem with the only two pro squads. You do have a huge number of pro players that you're trying to fit in.
Yeah. And then we've got Embra. Embra doing all right for depth. Bill Matter's out apparently for a few weeks.
Yeah, he's
doesn't look like he's 6 to 8 weeks, which doesn't sound too good. But they've got Embra they're not too shy for back rows.
No, not at all. Crosby we spoke about earlier.
I suppose the test for Embra this season is going to be that they're going to lose their big players during internationals that they've previously been able to rely on. They've been able to rely on Duhan van der Merwe to play on the wing and Jaco van der Walt to play at 10, and those guys are going to be in the Scotland squad. And even if, I'd be very surprised if Duhan van der Merwe isn't in the matchday squad for at least the first couple of games, see how he goes. Jaco van der Walt might be a different proposition, but it'll depend how he goes in training, I guess, and how well Hastings and Russell do. But there's a prospect, I suppose, of him returning to Embra, but then he's not there for the preparation and the build-up. So this is a test for Embra, and it's probably really the first time that they're going to have players in key positions missing, John, during those key times.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The point you're making about preparation is really important. It's fine and well to say that you'll get the player back, but they don't go back to late Tuesday, early Wednesday most of the time anyway, and that's assuming that there's no doubts, because you're talking about a big run of fixtures where players are going to be carrying knocks, players are going to be struggling right up till 3-4 hours before game time. So it might well be, if they're unlucky, where you've maybe got a Hastings or a Russell carrying an injury, they might not be able to get those players back at all, which would be really difficult for them. And obviously Cockrell's shown already that he maybe didn't have 100% confidence in your boy Chamberlain, which, given it was his first pro start, is understandable, but he's going to have to develop that. Quite, we've said it a couple of times on here, he's going to have to develop that because, like it or not, you're not going to be able to sign anybody, especially at 10, and Jacko will be there or thereabouts the squads, and you're not going to get him back, so, or not going to get him back all the time. It'll be a big challenge for them. They've always relied on their forwards being away, but it's a different game when you've got maybe those game changers in the backs away.
Yeah. I suppose the big question there, I mean, for Adam Hastings has come out and said that Glasgow need to be in the final. That's what they should be targeting. They need to be targeting the win. It's got to be the same for Edinburgh if they're going to progress. That they're at least looking at a semi-final this year. Is that? I mean, do you think that's realistic, or is it just too hardy and given the uncertainty surrounding anything to make any kind of bold predictions at this point?
I would say it's very optimistic for both sides, particularly Glasgow, because we were quite far off the pace last year and we've not been able to improve at all. Leinster haven't lost anyone, I don't think, and they've been stomping all over everyone, so I think it's going to be more of the same again. Munster, all right, fair enough, they lost Steinman, but they've still got Dialendi, and they've still got a number of Irish internationals. So I think it will be very difficult. I mean, I'd even be happy with a playoff spot for Glasgow this year because it is a real season of transition, new coaching staff, big overhaul of the sort of, I think this is the last of the talismanic kind of guys has gone. Maybe only Pete Horn is there from the old glory days. But I'd say playoffs for Glasgow would be ambitious, and Edinburgh, again, they should be looking to at least do as well as they did last season because they've not lost anyone either, I don't think. Well, apart from Matt Scott obviously went, but they seem to have their key positions sorted, the likes of Duhan, Jaco van der Walt, that back row, even though they're going to be away for a bit, they still have the likes of Crosby and whatnot backing up. But like with Glasgow, it's, they're an injury or two away from an absolute disaster. But I think playoffs, you need to aim for the playoffs. Obviously, you want to win the damn thing, but with Leinster being as strong as they are, it's very unlikely. We'll see that broken.
Yeah, that's fair, John.
Yeah, I think it absolutely is. I think both teams there needs to be a realism about the type of environment that we're working in this year, and I think lots of clubs are in that same position. So anything could happen, but Leinster are still there and are still too strong for everyone. So if you got playoffs, you're happy. Anything from there is a bonus.
Yeah, the big news today is that South African Rugby have voted to move its 4 high-profile franchises, which are the Bulls, Lions, Stormers and Sharks, from Super Rugby into an expanded Pro 16 in 2021. So we don't know if that is 2021 the calendar year or 2021 the season. The Pro 12 or whatever they're calling themselves at the minute, don't know what their official brand, I think it's still a Pro 14 according to the website. They've said the Pro question mark have said that they have structured the fixtures to allow some flexibility, I think early next year, so that they could absorb South African teams, although at that point I think they were talking about the 2 teams. So the Cheetahs are no, I'll get this right. Is it that? Yeah, the Cheetahs are not happy, so they're looking to sue South African Rugby because they're going to lose their place. The Southern Kings have gone under.
Yeah,
so they're not bothered. They don't exist. I don't think they're not bothered. They don't exist anymore, John. That's literally how unbothered they are.
I think with the Cheetahs, we should say that they haven't. I don't think they've threatened to sue yet. They've looked for legal advice. They've Dodsoned, basically.
They've Pete Dodson.
They've seen the typhoon coming and they've lawyered up. I mean, it's a good. I suppose necessity. This has always been on the cards.
Yep.
Because Super Rugby has been dying a very slow death. It isn't what it once was, and the travel involved was getting quite ridiculous in the different time zones for players. The way, as soon as the Pro 12 became the Pro 14, this was always on the cards because those 2 teams were essentially sent as, I suppose, forward scouts for how it might work. The South African teams want into Europe, so this is their gateway in there to play the European teams. Time zones, we're there or thereabouts, so although you've got long travelling distances, you're not suffering for jet lag when you get somewhere. You can do these mini tours. Altitude might be an issue, I suppose, but you can deal with that. Well, Bloom, if they get rid of the, we're not going to Bloemfontein anymore.
Bloemfontein, yeah, that's a sorted, yeah.
Just level it.
That's sorted that out, hasn't it? So
Rudy Jackson's literally breathing a sigh of relief right now.
So I suppose I'll start with you, Ian. This is a good move, I think, because it almost legitimizes the Pro 12 or the Pro 16, which has kind of been a necessity for Irish, Welsh, and Scottish teams as a kind of means to an end for international rugby. All of a sudden, you add the South African teams, you start getting much more high-profile players playing on a more regular basis. It becomes more marketable. And you're always all of a sudden potentially, you're competing with the top 14 in the Premiership for names at least.
Yeah, it could be a real boost to the competition. The Southern Kings were obviously not the best. Cheetahs as well. The first year they made the playoffs and they played a very exciting brand of rugby. But now if you get the big boys coming in, like you said, it boosts the sort of commercial value of it. The only sort of caveat I would have is that they'll probably be better than us, which will reduce competition, like prize money in that, and also it might drive away some fair weather fans if Glasgow and Edinburgh start languishing towards the lower depths of the league.
Well, I suppose the other way to look at that, John, though, if you kind of stick my optimist hat on, is that the standard of opposition has been raised.
Yes,
and so the players are going to have to raise their game week in, week out, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, that's a very fair point. I think we talk a lot on here about they're a good Pro 14, Pro 12 player, but they can't get there to an international level. And the reason for that, in a lot of senses, is excluding your Leinsters, there isn't many clubs that are as good a challenge as quite reaching into that international level. But if you're getting World Cup winning South Africans all kind of pulled together in very good teams, you're going to be facing some of the best players in the world, and that's going to be the making of your George Taylors, your Stafford McDowells. That's asking them the real questions. Can you cut it against these world class players? And if you can, then you're probably good enough to be in the Scotland squad. If you can't, you're not good enough to be an international rugby player, and that's the cruelty of it.
And I think part of the criticism that's levelled at the Pro 12/14/16/2400 is that teams will often not put their strongest side out to face Leinster, for example, because if you play in the long game and that's not the winnable game. The game you need to win the playoffs are the other games against the beatable opposition. So why risk your best players against Leinster, who are going to get to the final anyway, and just get to knockout rugby and then take it a game at a time from then? If week in, week out, you are going to have to beat the big teams to be in contention, then you're going to have to, everyone's going to have to raise their game, Ian, I suppose.
Yeah, but then with likes of Sexton and Alan Wynne-Jones, who's very, very rarely... I think I've seen more Ospreys in my life than I've seen Alan Wynne-Jones play for Ospreys. These guys, especially with the age of those two, for example, no disrespect to them, seeing as I'm older, but I've not had, God knows how many thousands of minutes of getting smashed by big giant lumps of men. Well, not on a rugby pitch anyway. But like you said, Leinster have been coasting with a second string. Second string Leinster teams have put like 50 points on the Warriors.
Yeah.
So I think we've proven that the likes of McDowell and that aren't good enough. Not him specifically. I don't want to single him out. He's a terrific player. He just needs more exposure. But maybe some other players aren't good enough.
But I suppose the other thing then is this is a criticism leveled by people who maybe follow the Premiership and top 14 more closely. That's the problem with the Pro ? Is that the big players don't play every week because they don't need to. not because the squad's better, just because nobody else plays the big players week in, week out consistently. So if all of a sudden you have a competition, and this doesn't necessarily do Scotland any good, because all of a sudden player management not goes out the window, but becomes a bit more stretched, let's say. If you have to play your big players every week, then that makes the competition more attractive for people to watch. If you know you're going to go down to Edinburgh and you're going to see Hamish Watson playing week in, week out, that might cause a problem for Scotland because it puts at more risk of injury and he's going to be a bit more tired come internationals. But the flip side is it's much more marketable, John.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the real test of this will be whether the South African teams get access to the European competitions, or whatever we decide to call it after, if they do get access. So if you give these four clubs coming in the opportunity to actually qualify for the Heineken, not the Heineken Cup, then all of a sudden that's four more teams that are possibly starting to come up the leagues. That top spot, that Champions Cup, all of a sudden becomes a lot more difficult to achieve. You're probably going to need to put your team out a wee bit more. So you will see more of the big players. And I think Ryan Cobain's made a very interesting point in the comments here. There we go. Regarding does it make it more attractive to television? It absolutely does, because it's not just that fans in the stadium want to see more of these, more of these Stuart Hogg players, more of these world-class players. People on television want to see that as well. And if people on television want to see it, they watch it, and then sponsors get involved. So it becomes so much more attractive for the TV companies. And whisper it, will we be away from Premier Sports?
That's exactly what I was thinking. We could take it away from them.
Dragged, kicking and screaming. I think that's a really interesting point. That then is you circle it back around. Yes, you have to play the players more to make it a more to be competitive, but also make it more marketable. Make it more marketable. You end up with more money because the SRU is a shareholder in the pro question mark at the minute. That's money that comes back then in to fund rugby in Scotland. So there's a lot. I think you're right. I can see the downsides that it potentially makes things harder for Glasgow and Edinburgh, but I can also see the financial benefits and plus sides of this as well, that it makes the competition better. It's not then just something that a means to an end for international rugby.
Yeah, but then what we'd also have to do is the SRU would have to make sure they hold on to the marketable players to get their full market value, because we keep punting them down south.
More chance of doing that if we've got Amazon Prime,
if you've got
or
the money to spend them.
True. Yeah,
in the bucks. I think it's going to be interesting no matter what happens with it. I think in terms of just new clubs coming in, it's always, I just love seeing different styles of rugby. And the South Africans have obviously got a reputation for really abrasive, aggressive rugby, and players need to be exposed to that level. That's the fact of it, and I'm looking forward to whatever happens. It'd be good just to see some rugby, to be honest.
Yep. Right, we're going to move on. We're going to do this now.
Well, we looked high and we looked low, we seen Dougie Bop on in speedos, but I just want to know, did you see the legend that's Dougie Donnelly?
Yes, it's Where's Dougie Donnelly, our section of the podcast where we ask you to get in touch with anybody that you've spotted out and about, loosely connected with Scottish rugby. We had one this week. We've got Ali Baxter got in touch on Twitter. He said he saw Petrus du Plessis in his local gym in Glasgow. He was wearing a trendy snapback and high tops. I don't know what a snapback is. Is that a hat?
That's the
hat?
Cap. Yeah.
Cap, okay. And high top. I know what those are. Whilst doing a combination of sprinting sled pushes. Anyone know what a sprinting sled push is?
He's done a video on these before. It's very impressive. It's the sort of, it's kind of like a scrummage machine style thing where you've got the sled out in front of you and you're sprinting forward with it, kind of like accelerating into the scrum. It's very impressive.
He was doing that and leaning his head against the yoga ball, strengthening his neck. He had many curious and worried onlookers. He said he should clarify he looked in great shape, and you don't appreciate these guys' size until you see them in the flesh. I was staring at his calves my whole workout. And Ali will be delighted to know that tweet was liked by Petrus Duplessis' wife.
Hey! Yeah, my
So-
missus was asking me a question about following. So I was Junior Balamako or former
Valacoloma.
go for it, Ian.
What?
There
Who
we
is
go.
it? Junior Bala. Oh fuck!
No, anyway.
I nearly said the F word there. Sorry.
Yeah, you nearly did. Yeah. Former Glasgow Warrior winger, Junior B. Let's go with.
Billy McCow. That's how you say it.
There you go. Well done. So his wife is very, very interesting and has a very interesting kind of thing going on Twitter as well. And I follow her on Twitter. And my missus was very confused about this. Like, what do you mean you follow a rugby player's wife? This is strange. So, but I stand by it. It's fine. She's very interesting. Give her a follow.
I like the fact that you're using. I like the fact that you're using the podcast as a platform to justify this to your wife, John.
Absolutely, yeah. I think she might be watching upstairs. So, and if she's not, I'm going to play this back to her.
I'm not gonna endorse it either way. I don't think we should bring domestic issues on the podcast, John. I'm not going to say that's all right, Alex. You make up your own mind.
I think I follow Wayne Barnes' wife on Twitter.
She's good value. Now I will say Polly Barnes is very good value. You see, because Polly Barnes basically, basically every time Wayne Barnes, I think anybody, especially when it's Wayne Barnes' wife, slags off Wayne Barnes every single time he sends a tweet. I mean, you've got to love that every single time.
I think that's fair game.
That is fair game. So that was Where's Dougie Donnelly. That's that. We're going to move on. We're going to go to when I find it. Where's my next? Where's the? There we go. Last jingle of the night. That's right. It's Hands in the Ruck time. It's our Any Other Business section of the podcast where we ask you to get in touch with your hands in the ruck. It can be good and bad. It can be nice and pleasant to have a hand in the ruck, and it can also be very frustrating. We've had a couple on Twitter this week. Graham Stevenson says his hands in the ruck is it's likely there'll still be more championship players, Saris, than Scottish Champions Cup finalists on the Lions tour. It's fair comment. I can't really argue with that.
There's still time. Damn it.
I know, and they might not be playing for the Saracens at the time. They might be on loan somewhere off the books.
That's it.
There is a rumour. Now, there is a suggestion because the championship because it's essentially gone amateur, they can't start up again because they don't come under the government, the English government's professional sports rules. So apparently there is a prospect that Saris may not play a single game this season and go up, or that they might just end up back in the Prem anyway, because one of the Prem teams is probably going to go bust at some point. So they'll just be parachuted back in.
It was all a plan. Nigel Ray had this sorted all along, didn't he? He knew what was going on.
All the Saracens players get rested in a Lions year.
Yeah, Nigel reinvented COVID-19.
That's heard it here first.
Allegedly.
Yes, that's not true. We've got in trouble for this kind of thing before. No, they did not do that. It was a joint investment venture with Lord Farrell.
COVID-19 is the name of the company, Makovunapola's property investment firm. It's the registered company under which he pays tax. That's not true either. We should make that very clear. We are joking. I think that's Macco, is it not? Vunico. They call that company, the Vunapola brothers, the Vunico. That must be interesting board game meetings because they didn't get on anymore. And I think they jointly run a business that was set up in the Saris. Anyway, we'll move on before we get sued. Well, anybody watches this anyway. Roy Sturman gets in touch on Twitter. He says, his hands in the ruck is no Scottish games on Channel 4 when the autumn internationals are shown. Irish, Wales and England outings are all covered at least once. Also, have Channel 4 ever shown any Scottish teams in their Champions Cup coverage? Am I missing something here? I think that's just scheduling, if I'm completely honest. partly there's a marketing thing there in that Channel 4 and the European Rugby want the biggest teams playing. And let's face it, Glasgow versus Saris is going to it'll get you, enough people will watch it, but you're not going to get the same as you'd get 2 Prem teams or top 14 in Prem playing. But, a bit of get the Pros 16 in, better competition, who knows? I think until we covered this last week, I think the Channel 4 thing is Channel 4 already had a deal for autumn internationals with certain teams already. And so I think it's just they've made an agreement with Amazon that they're going to do some free to air.
Yeah, it's the Ireland's games. So they're saying they're covering England, Wales, and Ireland. Well, yeah, they are. They're covering England v Ireland, and Wales v Ireland, and the Ireland games. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. So it was a done
no
deal.
Conspiracy here. That's fine.
And Amazon Prime is only $7.99, and you get a 30-day free trial. Enter
And
the
you get
code
free
Scottish Rugby
delivery.
Blog at the checkout. No, we don't. No, it's just that
Don't
doesn't
do
work.
yeah.
That won't work. No.
Try it though. It might work.
Here's an interesting Amazon fact, and I meant to mention this last week. If you have an Alexa machine and you say, Alexa, play Scottish Rugby Podcast, our podcast plays, not the official one. Because someone was smart enough to get in as soon as Amazon started doing podcasts.
That's fantastic.
So there you go. So say to your Alexa machine, Alexa, play Scottish Rugby Podcast, and you get the latest episode of our podcast.
Do you think we could ask Jeff Bezos for a tap now that we've mentioned Amazon a few times? It's not
I think so.
Shorty a few, Bob.
I think it's more like if you say him enough time, he pops up in your mirror and murders you. Is that not? Or is that Candyman?
Takes more money off you.
Should also again point out allegedly.
Allegedly.
We're only kidding.
Jeff Bezos is not the Candyman. I'll make that clear. My lawyers have instructed me to say that. Ali McFarland, this wasn't a hands and rock, it was more a general question, but I'm going to stick it. He says, Glasgow Warriors are selling a season ticket for this season, but Embra aren't. I thought the SIU would take a unified approach. Any ideas why? Glasgow have still got that thing where they've kind of got their own thing going on, haven't they, kind of marketing-wise? And
Well,
I don't know if it's just because Embra sit on a bank of desks over from the SIU marketing guys. They share an office, an open plan office, I'm assuming. That's just the SIU sitcom I've right in my head, but to imagine how it happens.
Well, I think what's happened is that it's if you don't have a season ticket, you can join this thing called Warrior Nation. So it's like an official sports club, and it puts you on a shortlist for season tickets that come up, or match day tickets for European games and playoffs and what have you. Because the tweets and that, and even the email I got, they're not exactly crystal clear. But I've signed into my account, and it says that I'm a current season ticket holder, and I've not been asked for any other money than the 55 quid at the start of the season thing they were doing. So I think it may be Warrior Nation membership, or it's something to do with if you're a Warrior Nation member, there's 500 season tickets that haven't been renewed, and that gives you like first dibs on getting them. So I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Rather than actual saying you can buy your season ticket for X amount and we can guarantee you 5 games or whatever. So I think it's season tickets that become available that are available to Warrior Nation members.
Yeah.
Initially.
So there you go. There you go. Hopefully Ian's answered that question for you. That's what we think it is. But nobody's going to rugby anytime soon anyway, so let's not worry about it.
No, that news from down south that all the amateur stuff's cancelled until January is quite disconcerting.
It is quite disconcerting. It doesn't look good for a return to rugby anytime soon. I mean, I suppose it's great that people are able to go. I think the fact that training's able to still go ahead and people will meet up and do that is fantastic. It's, there's still a way of getting money to clubs and stuff in the meantime. I know it's not getting games back on, but, rugby's all about getting away pals and playing. So there will be rugby at some point. We'll get back into it. But there's no amateur rugby in England till January. Well, we'll wait and see. There's been no announcements about Scotland as of yet. So we'll see. The one interesting thing I thought, and I don't think I wonder why nobody's done this, and SIU can have this idea for free if they're listening. Why have we not had drive-in rugby? Because fireworks night, I've seen drive-in fireworks nights where you go into a big field, You park up your car in your designated parking space, and you get a space around you, a socially distant space. Take your picnic, watch the fireworks, do the same. Big screen, put their game on a big screen. Everyone's got their windows down, but you're socially distanced. You can all cheer, you can all shout, you can all sing. You know, I'm sure people. How much do you pay for a drive-in cinema? What, 20 quid a pop for a car of four?
Never been to one.
So that's easy money. Just find a field somewhere. I mean, if they wanted to develop in mini Murrayfield, then you could use the back pitches.
Yeah, well, I think Braidholme, where GHA play, they've got AstroTurf pitches they train on right beside the main pitch, so you could fit a few cars in there, let a few people into the grandstand.
Get a wee board down. Yeah, you could easily do it. So I've not seen it anywhere yet.
Like flapper service, people bringing drinks and beverages and whatnot.
Ross Lawyer might have something to say about this, though, given that he has the trademark on the driving from training pitches over to games.
Allegedly, I don't know. Do we know that was Ross Ford? I'm already having to deal with about 6 lawsuits tonight already. Well, I did like
the value for your money, mate. You can get one lawyer to sort all this.
I'm sure. I think we've got at least 3 lawyers that listen to this, so we'll just get them to team up and help us. There's an interesting news from down in England where Wealdstone are playing Chesterfield on Saturday. This is in football in England. No spectators are allowed in the ground, and instead the game will be streamed on a screen in the clubhouse bar for a socially distanced crowd to watch, and the windows from the bar overlooking the pitch will be obscured. So you could do that, and they could open up the bar at Murrayfield whilst the game was going on.
Yep.
And play it on a screen. So people could be in Murrayfield, socially distanced at the designated tables, and watch the rugby in Murrayfield
taking place
while the rugby was happening in Murrayfield. They could set up a big screen on the back pitches. You get a designated table, big screen, everyone wraps up warm, because you have to wrap up warm to watch anyway. Easily done. 20 quid a head.
It's not a bad shout.
There we go. So I'll take a cut. I'll take 5% of gate receipts.
And you pipe the noise from there into the stadium so the players can hear it.
Oh,
gives them a boost.
Here we go. It sorts itself out.
We fixed rugby.
We've solved rugby.
I don't think anyone has ever said we have fixed rugby, by the way.
But there we go. If that happens, we take full credit for that, and we want 5% of the door.
Yep.
So, Mark Wilson said it's madness not to allow 12 to 18-year-olds to play. I don't know. I don't know enough. I'm going to be honest. I don't know enough about coronavirus. I think, from what I understand, I've spoken to a couple of youth coaches, and I think there's various issues with parents have to basically sit in the car while some other kids train with a coach, and then the kids have to go back to the car, but you have to have parents present and stuff. So I think logistically it becomes difficult. It's a shame, but I think the fact that we're able to keep doing training is amazing. I think it's full credit to the folk that work at clubs that allow it, that are allowing that to happen and enabling that to happen. So I think the fact that players are able to train and get together socially and play rugby on, even not competitively, is remarkable given where we were a few months ago. So long may that be able to continue. I'm going to search for another. I think we've got another hands in the ruck. Come in, John. Have you got hands in the ruck this week?
Yep, I do. Yep. So 2 weeks in the trot that Mr. Finn Russell's going to make his way into my hands in the ruck. People talking about whether Finn should be straight back into the team, straight back into the Scotland. If he's selected for Scotland in the Scotland squad, people are saying, "Oh, he's obviously not." Adam Hastings is the man in possession of the jersey, etc., etc., etc. International rugby's picked on merit, and Finn Russell has been tearing it up for his club side. So to suggest that he has no form to pick him for international rugby is utterly nonsense. We pick players all the time based on their club form, and yet all of a sudden, because one guy's been exiled for the squad for a while, we decide that no, you need to pick him based on international. Shut up, Wayne Boyle, mate. Yeah, nonsense. we would be, and I think Gregor Townsend's a very smart man, and the chances of him cutting off, we're not even just cutting off our nose with regards to that. We are cutting off many different bits of our body if we choose not to pick Finn Russell at 10 for these upcoming tests. So yeah, just people are saying, and I think, right, I'm going to speculate here for a second. I think people like to be controversial online, believe it or not. And I think people like to say things that they know are going to get a rise out of people like me. And they do it for a laugh. And there you go, you've got your rise. I am positively riled. So
John is erect.
away and enjoy your cave, you bunch of trolls.
I think the one interesting thing is how they're going to handle it, because they've done a good job, I think. In obviously Stuart Hogg's done a couple of interviews now, and I think part of that has got to be that they know he's going to get asked about it, and he's going to put out there that he's going to be playing for Scotland, that it's all resolved, that they've all talked and they're all made up. Gregor Townsend's been interviewed. He said similar things. Finn Russell's come out and said similar things. It's all very coordinated, and there is this kind of. It's very clear that he is back in the reckoning, and it's all water under the bridge for them. There's going to be, though, people who don't follow rugby closely, apart from in the international windows, and that's absolutely fine. I haven't got an issue with that at all. We've talked about it before on the podcast. That some people want to do that. I haven't a problem at all. Absolutely fine, but they're going to have to do it again. So we are going to, for all those people that say it's done, let's not talk about it. We're going to have to talk about it for the benefit of people who haven't caught those snippets of Finn Russell saying it's fine, we've made up. And there's going to be a big interview, no doubt, with Mark Palmer or someone like that, where you're going to have Finn Russell and Gregor Townsend sat on the same sofa, socially distanced, speaking about it all, and it'll all come out in the open. So I mean, but that's that's still to come. The other issue, that I suppose the other concern I've got, is to see what the top 14 do with the international window, because they're not happy it's been extended by World Rugby to allow for these autumn internationals. Now they've got their own issues, because I think everyone in French rugby at the minute is pretty much up on fraud charges. And I kind of get sued by the whole of French rugby, but they are up on fraud charges at the minute. So I don't know if they've got bigger fish to fry at the moment. But that was on the cards that the top 14 were going to take legal action against World Rugby. So whether or not he's available for all the games might be an issue. Whether he's available for the Georgia warm-up, for example, could throw a spanner in the works. But I agree with you, John. I think I can't see Gregor Townsend not picking him at 10.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I think the interesting thing will be what then happens to backup. And I think Adam Hastings is in a good place, because he's played 15 internationally, and below Stuart, you've got Blair Kinghorn, but Kinghorn potentially is looking at a start. So and he's got versatility as well. So you can see Russell starting, Hastings on the bench. Prospect of him coming on at 12, as Greg Laidlaw revealed to Iain in his interview.
Yep.
Shifting it to 12. Full cats at a rave.
Meow meow.
Especially if you got George on at 9 as well. The chaos.
Yep. Iain, what's had its hands in your ruck at the minute? Because I think I've got a late contender just hot off the press.
Nothing major. I mean, unfortunately, it's social media again, but in particular, good old Ian Wallace got into a bit of a tete-a-tete with Austin Healy over the weekend. And the one bit that annoyed me was when Austin Healy pulled John seems to have disappeared. Because Ian had tagged, for anyone who didn't see it right, Austin Healy was pulling the let's cut all these COVID-19 restrictions out, let's get everyone back, which obviously goes against government guidelines and what have you. So Ian Wallace pulled him out on this, and he tagged BT Sport in it at the time. So Austin Healy went with it. Are you trying to get me to lose my job? I've got 4 kids to feed. Now, I'm pretty sure that Austin Healy is doing better than a lot of people financially, for a start. Secondly, though, don't do that emotional blackmail thing. Thirdly, see if you think that what you wrote on a public domain was potentially going to get you in trouble with your employers. That's your own damn fault.
I know. I like the idea that Austin Healy posted his own tweet that said, "I'm sorry for people who've lost loved ones, but the only way to get out of the COVID roundabout is the Swedish exit. Let us get on with everything and take our chances. The stakes are too big not to," which I think completely misunderstands how the Swedish model has not worked, as well as a number of other things. And let's take our chances. Well, I know people who are perfectly healthy who've got long-term impacts from COVID-19, so it's not just the flu. But I like the idea that Austin Healy put that on Twitter and thought BT Sport will never see this. But then Ian Wallace, remember, has tagged BT Sport in a reply tweet. That's it, my job's hour. But I think if you are a broadcaster, you have to hold yourself to a higher standard of comments that you make. Now, if Austin Healy genuinely has researched the Swedish model and believes that that's the way forward, then fair play. He's entitled to his opinion. I think where that came from is it's a common bond of frustration. It's not been well researched because of the replies he came back with. He didn't, I think Ian raised a very valid point with him. He didn't come in particularly try to troll him. He just kind of said, "I think you're wrong and it's irresponsible to say that," and then tagged BT Sport and said, "What say you?" kind of thing. And that's a valid thing to go back to someone like that with and say, what's your evidence? Now, if Austin Healy had come back, so well, actually, and if you look at the Swedish model, I think it's very successful and put his points forward. It's not, and again, I'll stress it is not successful in any way, shape, or form. That would be fine because he'd be debated. But I think what he went back is, you're trying to make me and my 4 kids, you're a troll, you're coming at me. And it's this entitlement that these guys have in the media that saying, well, you're trying to silence me. It's like, no, I'm just telling you what you're saying is wrong. I'm not trying to silence you. I'm trying to debate you, and coming back and throwing a tantrum about it doesn't particularly make you look very good.
There was two. He did call. There was 2 slightly derogatory insults thrown at him. Clown and another one which we might not be able to say. But no, it was the sort of, like you said, it doesn't seem to be a very well researched opinion, and instead you just sort of throw your toys at the pram, and the whole, you'll try and you try to make me and my 4 kids homeless. That don't wash you. And another thing that annoyed me was Austin Healy been saying. So Andy Good. Sorry, I've stopped following Andy Good on Twitter because I get fed up reading his pish. But when he said sending congratulations to Exeter, he said that all the fans will be doing the tomahawk chop tonight. And I just thought that there's a campaign against that. You've deliberately sort of tried to go with people by mentioning the tomahawk chop. Why didn't you just say they're celebrating? Why did you have to specifically go with the tomahawk chop thing? Yeah,
I think those are fair things. Hot off the press, this is reported on the offside line that Richard Cockrell wants the Pro 14 to consider a salary cap. And
that'd suit us, certainly.
That's fine, I know, because I would be below. Yes, I agree with Richard Cockrell. Let's have a salary cap, Ireland.
What say you, Leinster?
I think I can I take his point, because I think what it would do is create a more level playing field so that you don't have unions stacking one side for to be successful with their best players. And it might even do a certain service, I suppose, to fringe squad players, in that it doesn't just leave them hanging on, that you have to have more trimmed down squads. So you don't then have players kind of just playing 3 games a season, but being paid relatively well to do that. So you have to play everybody. Everyone has to play. I think my only concern would be from a player welfare point of view, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea if it's better thought through. John, you're nodding. Oh, John's on mute. We can't hear John. I can't hear him. No,
it must be settings.
He's changed his settings. Ian, salary cap.
Welfare and potential exodus would be my concerns, because we know that the salary cap would be probably lower than it is in England, you would imagine. And also France don't have one. So my concern would be that we would lose players. But if we get this expanded competition and the extra financial benefits from that, then perhaps it's a goer. But do we?
Are we going to touch the? Are we even going to touch the edges of it? I doubt it.
Would we get near the salary cap? What is right? Let's say that certain associations would be looking for a higher limit than others.
Yes, I think that's fair to say. I might force people to get rid of their the kind of pointless pro teams, I guess. I say pointless pro teams, that sounds harsh, but Wales have been struggling on with 4 pro teams for a while now. And I'm not trying to do those pro teams wrong, but the constant moan about Wales, we haven't got any money and all of this. It's like, well, you've probably got at least 1, if not 2 pro teams too many.
Yeah, but then you're putting a pro player out of job, possibly. That's
possibly, but I think that's kind of the unfortunate.
That's the cutthroat world of professional sport, isn't it?
Exactly.
Am
And
I
on
back?
that note,
Can we hear me?
you're back. John's back. Do I throw you tuppence worth before we go, John? Because I thought we'd probably get over the hour mark tonight, but there we are, an hour and 35 minutes in. Let's try and get to nice. You got 4 minutes, John. Go on.
4 minutes.
Salary cap.
Salary cap. Yeah, no, I think it's a really good idea. I think in terms of there's a couple of key points for this. I think the cost of rugby in particular is had started to rise prior to COVID. Seeing, not saying these guys don't deserve the money they're getting, but you're starting to see players on the £1 million contracts and things like that, and it's starting to get a bit silly. The amount of money in rugby you can't necessarily afford that in a sustainable way. So I think having a cap that allowed clubs to trim their cloth accordingly and actually still be competitive would be really sensible. I'd take all your points regarding player welfare. I think that's really would be something to be considered. But quite often with these caps, there's caveats for academy players. So it would be pretty much the same. So, good idea. And it screws Leinster over. So I'm all for it.
And on that point, thank you for listening to this week's episode, Ryan Wilson's Periodicals, as I think we're going to call it.
Definitely.